Welcome to this episode of the Mindset Game podcast. I am thrilled and excited to have Swamiji here with us. You're going to learn in a moment even more about what that special word means and how he became what we call Swamiji. So this amazing individual that we have with us today is a transformational teacher, coach, and author. There is so much I can say about this special person. I'll start by saying how I met him. We met at a local nonprofit organization that supports women in transition. It is called the Fresh Start Women's Foundation here in Phoenix. And he and I were both volunteering there to do some work to help the women. And then he and I continued the relationship, and I even attended with my daughter one of his events that you'll learn more about in terms of what we covered there, called The Power of Patterns, and got to learn more about him. So I want to kind of share a really cool introduction that's actually in the back of one of his books. And that is that he has been a bar mitzvah boy and an initiated monk. He's a husband, a father, a student, and a Ph.D. psychologist, a management consultant. He's been a consulting firm partner, an executive coach, and a spiritual guide, as well as a nonprofit executive, a board chair, a teacher, a lecturer, and a healing practitioner. Swamiji, it is with great joy that I welcome you to this podcast. Thank you.
Joy for me. I love you, and I love being with everyone here. And I'd love to continue speaking and sharing. That's what my life is all about. So
thank you. So let's start with, what is a Swamiji? What does that mean, and how did you become one?
What is the Swamiji? Well, Swamiji is it ends with J-I, so that means respected Swami. So I became a Swami after about 4 years of being a brahmachari, which is a monk. So many years ago, I think, it was 2003, I think, I was initiated as a brahmachari, a monk. Then 4 years after that as a Swami. So these are titles, and they're also initiations. So there's also downloading of energy and I have a guru. Saima is my guru. So with my guru, I was initiated energetically into lineages. So that was as a brahmachari first, and as a Swami. And then 2 years ago at the Kumbh Mela, which is this huge ceremony in India, any of you have heard of it, with maybe 70 to 100 million people over several weeks, I was initiated as a Mahamandaleshwar, which is another title. And then my name became Swami Parameshwar Das Maharaj. So I've had many different names, Swamiji for short. So that's helpful for everybody just to remember that.
So thank you for sharing a little bit of that. I mean, clearly there's a great deal of respect and experience and wisdom that goes along with that title.
Yes, correct. It's given, that different titles are given by the guru based on the amount of sadhana, meaning spiritual practice, service, we call seva, selfless service, and the teachings. And I was a teacher for many years. So because of all of that, I became a Swami after being a brahmachari. Becoming a brahmachari, before that, I was, as you said, I was a consultant for over 25 years, and I could go on and on about my background before that. However, when my guru asked me, do I want to become a brahmachari, I was already celibate and already vegetarian, and those are the main vows. And then there are other things that was already who I was. So when Saima asked me to be a brahmachari, a monk, I just said yes, because that was my way of life anyway. So, and then that continued the path to Swami and after that. So
it is so fascinating. I certainly am wondering, and I imagine a lot of our listeners are wondering, how does one go from being a PhD psychologist, management consultant, living that life, to being a monk or doing the amazing things that you do? How does that happen?
I always say, for short, just read my book. My first book, called In the Path of Light, I've written 6 books, but the first one really tells all the different stories and lessons I learned over, at that point, 15 years with Saima. So I describe myself in terms of my life. And as you say, I was at that point in time when I became, when I found my guru, or my guru found me, and I became a brahmachari first. I was a psychologist and a management consultant and a partner in a large consulting firm. And at that point, I was a husband. And within 1 year of my life, a year and a half, My mother died, my brother died, I got divorced and lost my job. So my whole identity was gone. Now, I don't recommend this as a path for people. This is what happened to me because of my path and let's say my karma, my dharma. So then I was completely open. I had no identity, and I was a lot of emotion. I was in therapy, and a lot was going on. And then I met my guru, and because of the love I felt and the surge of love and expansion in meeting her, and then going to different workshops and having different experiences, I then I started my spiritual path. I hadn't really been spiritual before that. I grew up Jewish, as you say, bar mitzvah boy, and then I started the path and continued in the path, and there are many different experiences and changes and transformations over all those years.
Wow. Well, again, I'm grateful that you are here with us today, that you've been through that process, and that you are able to share with us today what you know about the power of patterns. Now, this is, as you know, a podcast about mindset, about how our belief systems, those patterns, impact our reality and every aspect of our life, of course. So what do we mean when we say patterns? What do you mean by that?
So patterns are, all of our teachings and all the work we do is about energy. We do a lot of energetic work. So we say patterns are, since childhood, we grow up with them. So that they are these energetic patterns, which are expressed through behaviors and different situations we attract in our thoughts and our feelings. And that we have these patterns that make up our personality. So our personality is made up of energetic patterns, and they're old patterns, many of them, as I say, from childhood, and they show up as these thoughts and feelings and actions and behaviors, etc. And they help us, that actually through these patterns, we interact with our world. So as a child, we took on a lot of patterns, a lot of programming, and we could talk about also the brain pathways, and we talk about the energies that we have inside of us that we took on from our parents. We could also say we took on from our ancestors. So it's continued for many, many generations, but we take them on and they help us to influence the world and interact with the world. And the work that we do with these patterns is energetic work, because as we say, underneath of the behaviors and the thoughts and the feelings and these situations we keep on attracting that recur are these energies. And we need to get below the behaviors to these energies to work with them to transform the old patterns into new patterns, meaning we're always making patterns. It's a matter of whether these patterns as energy and then as thoughts, feelings, behaviors are serving us. They work for us. Maybe they work for us as children, but they don't work for us anymore. So we're talking about with the power of patterns, they're powerful in the sense of they really direct us. And we can continue to go with the old ones that don't serve us anymore as we get older, or we can look at the old ones, transform them, and create new patterns that work for us. So it's not about getting rid of all patterns. It's about creating patterns that work for us and transforming the old ones.
Thank you. And forgive my ignorance here. Many people listening, hear the word energy and they don't quite know what is meant by that. Would you be willing to just expand a little bit more? What do you mean by energy in this context?
Well, energy, I mean, you could feel different energy, vibration. If you breathe in your heart and you feel gratitude, this is a way, and probably you've done different podcasts around heart math and being heart-centered and all that. So you can feel an expansion. So when you feel expansion, that's an energy, that's a higher frequency, a higher vibration energy. When you feel contraction or fear compared to the expansion, which is love-based, you feel that contraction, it's lower frequency. So we talk about energy as contracting or expanding. And you can experience that, as I say, in different ways, especially with the heart, you expand. When you're afraid, you contract. So there's the spectrum of low vibration, low frequency, and high vibration, high frequency, that whole spectrum, and that's contraction to expansion.
And I believe that many of us have felt that kind of contraction, as you said, anytime we're in fear or worry or doubt, and we just kind of want to, sometimes run away or, from the situation or not deal with it. And sometimes we feel that expansion, just, we feel that feeling of love or ease or whatever that is for us. And what does that have to do again with those patterns, those conditioned kind of patterns from the past, if you don't mind?
Yeah, with the patterns we want to transform, and as I say, they're conditioned, they're programmed from the environment, from childhood, from whatever. We're learning, as children, we're sponges. As young children, we're sponges, and we take on everything, and they turn out to be these patterns that also, as I said, affect the brain. So it's a matter of when patterns don't work for us, those are the low frequency, low vibration, fear base. So we want to transform our fears and the contraction and what's creating suffering and what's creating, everything that we describe as, we talk about low frequency energies, we talk about fear, abandonment, worry, overwhelm, anger, resentment, shame, guilt, all those are low frequency, low vibration, fear-based energy. So we don't want to hold on to, well, we do hold on to them because they're automatic. This is the thing when we've been conditioned and they're brain pathways and we're just used to it and it's habitual. So when they're habitual behaviors and the same thoughts that come up with associated feelings and the same situations, this is all habit. And when it's creating suffering and contraction, those are the low frequency patterns that we want to transform when we become aware of them. So I could take you through some of the patterns method, but the first step is awareness. When we're aware of patterns that we have that cause this, then we could do something with them. Awareness is always the first step in self-mastery, as we say.
And thank you for offering to kind of take us through that, because I think many people know consciously that they shouldn't be feeling a certain way and that there's another way, but they don't know how to get there. There's just so much suffering. They struggle to think differently than how they think or to kind of make that stick. So what can we do?
Right. First to say that we're all on the same boat. We all have old patterns. We all have low frequency patterns. So it's not just like you, whoever's listening to this, it's all of us. So the first step of awareness is to be aware of, okay, I'm suffering. What's going on? What situation? I mean, to do a quick exercise now, you can close your eyes and you can call up a situation where you feel you're suffering or that isn't working and that's caused some stress. And then in this situation where you see yourself, are you with somebody? Are you alone? What are you thinking? What are you feeling? How are you behaving and interacting? Just what's going on? What is the situation itself? And then when you are in this situation and you're imagining it and you're feeling it and you're feeling some contraction, then there's some pattern there. And then if you can, say, imagine all this and feel all this, is there a name you can give to it? Like say a name that might be about I'm afraid or I'm angry or just some kind of name. This is an awareness that you're imagining right now, but you can do this in any moment. I'm not feeling good. I'm feeling uncomfortable. I'm feeling stressed out. What's going on? What am I thinking? What am I feeling? What's the situation? How am I behaving? And then be aware of some kind of pattern and then say, okay, well, this recurs. This keeps on happening. So this same situation keeps on happening. I'm in a job I don't like, or I'm in a relationship with the same kind of person, or I have these same behaviors. I overeat, I overspend, or some kind of theme that happens within. I'm worrying all the time and I'm overwhelmed all the time. These are different indicators of a pattern. Recurring situations, habitual behaviors, and also these repeated themes. And then through those, you can identify whether there's a pattern and then become aware of it. And then if you want me to continue, that awareness is the first step, but I know you wanted to say something now.
Well, first of all, I wanted to say thank you personally, because taking me, through that little exercise, and I imagine for others as well, I was able to connect with what that feeling was. I felt it very strong, and I definitely felt that contraction that you refer to. And
what would you call that feeling? I mean, is there a name you would give to what you just experienced?
Yeah, what showed up for me when you guided me through it is I'm scared. I'm scared.
Scared. Okay.
Yeah.
And giving a name to it helps, because if there's certain situations where you feel that, then you really say to yourself, okay, I'm aware I'm scared. Scared. Okay, that's it. And then you could do something about it.
And it was, thank you, Swamiji. And it was really helpful because I didn't really think that I do this work a lot on myself, right? And I did this with others, and I didn't even connect with that scared feeling anymore. I thought it was past me, but I thought, wow, it's still there. So thank you. I'm curious now, about the next step, as you said. Once people become conscious of what is that energy that they're feeling, maybe a thought, an emotion, what's the behavior, as you said, maybe even connecting it to past behaviors, other instances, and seeing it as a pattern. What then?
Okay, so you have awareness, then you have acceptance. So the thing about acceptance doesn't mean you agree with it or like it. It just means you accept that this is energy, right? It's a situation, it's behaviors, it's thoughts, feelings. However, it's an energy of being scared, a scared energy, right? So I'm aware of it, and then I accept it, meaning I accept that it's inside of me, that I'm experiencing this. I accept that it's there. It's there now. It's not there forever. It's inside, and I accept that. I accept it's an energy. It's more or less it's okay, or I accept it.
And
because
some people,
if you reject it or resist it, you can't do anything with it.
So do you mean like actually to say to ourselves, I accept that I'm feeling, such and such right now, or that I'm thinking such and such?
Yeah, it's not just saying it, it's actually feeling the acceptance. Mm-hmm. It's actually accepting it. So this is the step you have to go through, the step of accepting it. And as I say, it's accepting means that you accept that it's inside of you. You accept that it's there now. And that's the acceptance. Mm-hmm. Sometimes we hear acceptance as I agree with it, I'm embracing, I accept it. I accept that the energy of scared is inside of me in these situations or whatever.
And I wonder if some of the individuals listening might be wondering, well, I'm scared to accept it because will I see more of it in my life? Is it going to be even more real if I do that, right? That's why a lot of people are like, I don't want to feel that. It doesn't feel comfortable, and I don't want any more of that. So I want to push it away. How do we?
Yeah, the acceptance is the step of transforming it. So I'll continue with acceptance.
Please.
Also within acceptance, we can say you're also accepted into your heart, because sometimes we say welcome it into the heart, but we're also accepting it. So it's inside of me, it's there, and I bring it into my heart. So this is something where, and Vered, you've talked to the group on podcast about heart math and heart scent using.
Yes, okay. We've trained them on quick coherence technique.
Okay, so and the power of the heart. So therefore, okay, I accept that it's inside of me. You can even locate it. This is where I'm feeling it. I accept it's there, and here it is. A lot of times it's in the stomach or wherever it is. And then you can use your hands, or you could just use your intention, and you bring it into your heart. I accept this. And you breathe it into your heart.
So is there any reason that people can fear accepting it? Could it do any harm to accept that kind of low frequency energy?
No, it can't be harmful, because when you accept something, you're embracing it. And in that acceptance is a high frequency energy. So this is important. So with acceptance, so we have a list of, you can list all these high frequency. I talked about low frequency before, right? So the high frequency are acceptance, peace, love, joy, harmony, balance, all those that expand. So acceptance is high frequency, and also the heart. So when you accept a low frequency energy, it dissolves, it transforms. So it doesn't harm you. You're actually embracing it and transmuting. Some energies transmute. When low energies go into high energies, they're transmuted, they're transformed. which then takes us to the next step, which I won't get into yet. But to answer your question, it doesn't harm you to accept it. It actually dissolves it.
Thank you, Swamiji. So just to clarify, once we become aware, like we either imagine a time when we felt a way we didn't want to feel, or, maybe in real time we're in an experience that's distressing in some way, we just kind of pause for a moment to say, how am I feeling right now? What's my internal experience? What am I thinking? And then once we become conscious of it, then we can accept it. It's what you're saying is it's absolutely essential to accept it before we can transmute it into a better feeling state or a better feeling thought. And so to do that, we ask ourselves, where is it in the body? Yes.
Where am I experiencing it? Yes. Mm-hmm.
And what if someone doesn't know where it is in the body? What then?
If they are feeling it, that's okay. They can just bring the feeling, however they're experiencing it, into the heart. They don't have to locate it to say, okay, it's in my kidney or in my liver. They don't have to do that.
Yeah. And so if you don't mind just clarifying a little bit more, because this is new for many of us, how do they bring it into the heart?
Well, the breath is very helpful. So it's actually directing it. So if I'm feeling it and it's actually feel the heart, and it's, how can I describe it? It's really breathing it and bringing it, directing it into the heart. So there's the breath, directing it, bringing it. You can actually, it's an energy, you can actually even speak to it, since all these energies are intelligent. So you can, and they actually, another thing about the low frequency energies, they don't want to be there. They don't want to stay where they are in the body. So that's what we say, that because we're meant to be high frequency beings, right? So these low energies come in, but they actually don't mind leaving. So
That's good to know.
Yeah. So we can speak to them, direct them with the breath. Our intention, have the intention that they move into the heart, bring them in that way, in all those different ways into the heart.
So if I'm feeling, for example, scared, as in my example, so I can say, okay, I actually feel it in my heart and kind of in my belly. Yes, yeah. This is where I'm feeling it. And so I imagine, if you will, kind of breathing it into my heart. Yeah. And I say, I accept that I'm scared. It's okay. I accept that I'm scared. And okay. That actually, I already feel an ease. I have to admit, even just by saying those words, it's like, I don't know, there's like a shift.
Yeah. I accept it. And that's all part of acceptance. You could say I welcome it, but it's especially acceptance. And this is a big thing in general. I'll bring it to a bigger context. In Saiman, we are talking a lot nowadays about compassion and having compassion for ourselves, which is love and understanding. So even in that compassion, I have compassion for myself, and this is here. I understand why it's here, and I have that love for myself and that understanding of why it's here. And that compassion also moves it into the heart, because compassion is in the heart.
And what if someone hears that and says, well, I don't understand why it's here. I don't know why I feel scared. And
you don't have to know why. Well, this is important. You're not analyzing it. You don't have to know why it's there. If you know it's there, that's the awareness, right? Mm-hmm. If you're aware it's there, then you accept it. You don't have to figure out why it's there, and it's because of my mother, because of my father. So it's not like analysis or analyze. Yeah. That's an important point. You don't have to know why. You have to know it or be aware it's there to accept it.
So thank you. You're explaining this so clearly. I'm so grateful. So we become aware of how we feel. We accept it. We bring it into the heart with compassion. What then?
Okay. And then you feel it dissolves. And then what happens is, and you have to practice this, and we have a whole program about this, and there's one coming up on the 27th, and there'll be future ones. And I'm describing this in the short few minutes. So you have a lot more in the program itself online. You have a lot of time to practice all this and experience it. So you might not be experiencing it now in 5 minutes, but you accept it. And then when you accept it and it dissolves, something else arises within you. because you're creating a space, because this old energy is dissolving, it's gone. So therefore, there's a space that was taken up before by this old pattern and energy. So a new energy arises, and that new energy is the new pattern. And that new pattern is the next step of activate. We can say awareness, acceptance, activation. So we want to activate this new energy within us and embody it, breathe it. We'll come back to what it might be, but you're activating a new energy that arises to fill this space, and you want to embody it, breathe it everywhere, and then you activate it by breathing it everywhere. And then you also activate it by expressing it in your life, taking action with that new energy in your life in a situation or situations. You could also say an A for action, but we're calling it activation, which includes embodiment and action.
So would it be all right if I perhaps repeated what you said, at least my version of it, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. So once we become aware of how we feel in a certain moment, whether it's in real time or a past event that we're still not feeling good about, and we label, for example, in my case, feeling scared, or maybe sometimes it's feeling worried or resentment or guilt or shame or whatever that is, then the next step is to accept that. And it is kind of just part of it is speaking with that energy and saying, as you said, I accept that this is what I'm feeling. Perhaps I welcome it, maybe labeling where, if at all, we feel it in the body. Mm-hmm. And, almost imagining taking that into the compassion of our heart, maybe with some deep breaths, some coherent breaths, heart-focused breathing. And then, as you said, we activate. So what's really interesting to learn here is that once, kind of the energy, the old energy that didn't feel so good starts to dissolve, which, as you're saying, it naturally does once we, accept it, then there's an opening. And do we get to choose how we want to feel, or does that just kind of happen? How does that?
The way we describe it and the way it happens is that it happens. Meaning it rises and you feel something arising and then you label it.
Oh.
So rather than, okay, I choose this, it will just arise and it will be a high frequency energy. So remember, what's transformed is a low frequency. What's arising is a high frequency, a new pattern. And that high frequency, so normally it's maybe, I'm not sure if there's an exhaustive list, but there's a long list of different kinds of high frequency energies, like I mentioned some of them, right? So, and there's love and joy and abundance.
May I share what I'm feeling?
Yes, of course.
Because I believe that dissolving happened as you were describing and as I brought it into my heart. And I immediately felt compassion for this individual and empathy. I started to be very curious. I wonder why this individual is going through this. I want, not from a judgmental thing, but just being really curious but a lot of compassion. It's like I don't take things personally anymore. I'm just feeling a lot of compassion.
Great. So let's go with compassion. So what you do is you feel the compassion and you breathe it and you spread it everywhere, kind of embody it. You can fill the space if you know exactly where the other one left, but you don't have to. You just kind of breathe it everywhere, compassion, and feel it everywhere. And then you imagine it in this situation with this person. And then you imagine yourself expressing the compassion with the person. That's the action part of it, of the activation, right?
Yeah.
There's
Wow.
embodiment, and then there's expression of it. And then you imagine it, you feel it, and you're embodying it even more through the imagination of it, of the expression of it with this person, right? It's even more within you. And then it'd be great if you actually call the person, see the person, and behave with that person with compassion.
Wow. So thank you. Like I said, I had an experience just in these few moments, and I imagine that others as well. And certainly I imagine this is something that takes practice, getting more comfortable. May I ask another question? I'm curious about how intuition plays into all of this? Or, some might call it guidance, intuitive guidance. How, if at all, does that kind of have a role in this patterns method?
Interesting. I'd say it's probably the most when the new patterns are arising. It's kind of an intuition of, well, what message are you getting? What is this new energy? So I feel that intuition, especially going from the dissolving of the old pattern and low frequency to what new one is arising. Let your intuition speak to you as to what that new frequency is. I think that's what occurs to me when you talk about intuition. And I do want to mention something before we complete about resistance.
Please.
So if you're feeling resistance, you can't accept. So then you have to accept the resistance first. So if you're feeling, or resistance shows up, there are different signposts of resistance, but a lot of the times it's qualifying, explaining, suppressing. I'm confused is a sign of resistance. Overwhelmed. So you might feel this resistance, and therefore you're not feeling any acceptance of that low frequency. You have to then be aware that you're resisting.
Wow.
And then say, okay, now I accept my resistance.
Is it resistance like to let that energy go? Like in my example, like feeling scared, so you're saying that in some cases our body may not want to let that feeling go?
Not the body, it's the mind. This is not mindset, right? It's all about, no, you don't, you're used to it. It's comfortable. Maybe you're overeating or overspending and you're resisting giving that up. You're attached to it.
Yes. In NLP, we call it a secondary gain. There's a reason for that behavior. So how do I accept? Oh, sorry, Swamiji, I didn't catch that.
About landmark education, they would say there's a payoff. Compared to the cost. So
I guess if I notice some resistance, if you will, to that acceptance, yes, at that stage, so I've become aware and I'm a little bit resistant, do I do the same thing as we talked about before, just saying, as you said, I accept that I'm resisting this?
I accept my resistance.
I accept my resistance.
Which is an energy. There, and I just also a quick not aside, but a quick point is we say there are two major universal patterns, low frequency patterns: judgment and resistance. A lot of people experience judgment and resistance. So if you're attached to it, so I accept my resistance. You breathe it, and then you can work on the other pattern after you've dissolved the resistance.
So do we do the same thing with the resistance that we do for that low frequency energy, like fear or doubt or worry? Do we actually bring the resistance in our heart? Is that what you're suggesting? Kind of like
the same thing. You're bringing it into your heart. Yes. And then what shows up, actually, you're accepting it by bringing it into the heart, but the quote unquote, when you dissolve resistance, there's acceptance. So you don't have to find another thing to work on related to resistance. You're accepting. So you've dissolved the resistance, and then you can say, okay, now I'm going to work on the fear, on the shame or the doubt or whatever it is.
So what if someone does this and they don't notice an immediate shift? Like, let's say they say, okay, I accept that there's a part of me that's resisting this. So I accept this energy that I don't want to feel. I accept it. I accept that this is what I'm feeling right now. What do they do if they don't notice a shift and they start to doubt that this is even working for them?
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes you have to repeat. Repetition is key also for self-mastery. I mean, Saima is always speaking about, my guru Saima is always speaking about repetition. We have these different programs. We have one actually right now that a lot of us are doing called the new mindset for an unbounded reality. And they're hypnotherapy practices and sessions that we have. So Ma's always saying, repeat, listen to them over and over again. And and Ma's repeating for centuries, the same teachings. Mm-hmm. So repetition is, if you feel it hasn't worked, you repeat it. That's what practice is, discipline. You repeat.
Yeah.
So that's a very important point, Vera, that sometimes, not to expect that it won't work, but sometimes it doesn't, then you repeat it and you repeat it. and then you embody it, and then you take action with it. Then you take action with it again. So you might have to repeat the awareness and the acceptance and the new frequency coming up. And then you also need to repeat the new pattern, not just once, meaning it's not just showing compassion to this person once, it's showing compassion more than once, but also to other people and also to yourself. So you're expressing the compassion many, many different times so that you can then embody compassion as this new high frequency pattern that also creates a new pathway in the brain. So that's very important for the activation part of it, or the action part of it, is to repeat the new pattern.
Thank you, Swamiji. I think that the practices today are invaluable. And I wonder if we can just ask one more question before we complete. And it's more an invitation for an example or some kind of a little case study because we've talked about a lot of concepts today. And certainly I've had an experience. And if someone is wanting to kind of see, okay, can you give me an example of an individual that did this process and experienced a shift, whether it's yourself in your own life or other people that you've taught or helped heal in some way, what would you be willing to share?
Well, I mean, thousands of people in our global community have transformed through this, because we have the power of patterns, then we had some advanced courses. And so we've been working with patterns for many, many years. And for myself, I was a worrier. So I've transformed my worry through the patterns method. I coach and do coaching. So sometimes it shows up in my coaching where I use the patterns method with people, and I've seen them transform because it's very quick. And it's as you say, it's simple. And there's these 3 steps. So as for myself, I'd say with the worry, I'd have to really think. It's been so long, and there's so much. And this is another key point, is that patterns are showing up all the time. So if you transform this one, I said we're patterns makers, right? So it's not just one. So it's also not to be disillusioned when patterns show up that contract you. You just use the method on this new other pattern to transform it, and then there's a new pattern. That's just life. That's just the practice. And there's evidence of a lot of success with this, just of all the thousands of people I know and I've worked with.
Yeah, thank you. And I can certainly vouch for that because I attended one of your trainings and saw it in my own life and in others in the room. And I imagine for physical healings as well. Have you had situations with people that were in your trainings or in your coaching that maybe had some physical ailment and that shifted?
Yeah, because a lot of these old patterns and low frequency patterns affect the body. So whether that's the stress or the frustration, or you could also work with maybe pain, but in certain areas, yes, that kind of contraction and suffering. So the body changes related to the thoughts and the feelings and the behavior. It's all interrelated, and the impact on the body. So I have seen physical, because also when you're expanded, it affects the whole body. And with the joy and the smiling and the parasympathetic system, and just all the effects on the body of changing old patterns and into transforming old patterns and creating new ones.
Absolutely. And I know certainly we have research out of the Institute of HeartMath that validates those coherent states absolutely create more harmony in the body and therefore greater health. So Swamiji, how can people learn more about you, about the various programs, and so on?
All right, so I'd say my website is thepathoflight.com. So there's different teachings and articles and audio recordings and video recordings, and also some other websites on the homepage of my website. And in terms of Power Patterns programs, there's a website that's awakenedlife.love. And that has all the different programs, including the power programs mentioned on the website. There's one coming up. I'm not sure when this is going to be played for everybody, but there's one on February 27th. My daughter, Becky, actually teaches this many different times with Jivan Das, who's another monk. And she's teaching it on February 27th, and they'll teach it in the future as well. So inthepathoflight.com, awakenlife.love.
Thank you, Swamiji. And from my heart, just a whole lot of gratitude, not just, of course, for the very generous time that you've given to all of us today, but for all the work that you've done in all these years. You really do bring so much love, so much light. I can certainly say in my own life, and I've witnessed in others. So I thank you.
I thank you, Barrett. Love you.
I love you too.